Hi, my name is Alan Singer. I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Virtual New Jersey Council for the Social Studies Annual Conference. I'm a former New York City high school teacher, and I am currently a teacher educator at Hofstra University. I've been a member of the New Jersey Council for the Social Studies for more than 2 decades. I previously edited Social Science Docket, and I now assist in editing Teaching Social Studies. I'm going to talk today about teaching climate history, either integrating it into your social studies curriculum or as a standalone interdisciplinary unit. First, I want to share my screen. And from the start, teaching climate history, Alan Singer, Hofstra University. This is my email address, and I welcome you to stay in contact with me. There's an old African-American spiritual of resistance called "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep," that dates back to slavery days. In a verse that references the Judeo-Christian biblical book of Genesis, the Hebrew God regrets having created humanity because of its wickedness and decides to send floodwaters that will wipe from the face of the earth the human race and all species of animals, birds, and creatures that move along the ground. The God then relented a bit and instructed Noah, a righteous man, to build an ark so his family and a male and female representative of each species could survive to repopulate the planet. After the flood receded, God told Noah, at least according to this song, that fire, not floodwaters, would be used if God decided to destroy the humankind again. African-American author James Baldwin made the phrase, "the fire next time," the title of a 1963 collection of essays on race in America. As those living through the 3rd decade of the 21st century already know, the earth and humankind now face both fire and floodwaters as a result of global warming-induced climate change. In January 2021, Copernicus, the European Climate Change Service, announced that 2020 tied 2016 as the warmest year at least since 1880, when accurate modern temperature records keeping began. September, October, November 2020 each set a record for high average temperature. The previous 6 years, 2015 through 2020, were the 6th warmest years on record. And the decade 2011 through 2020 was the warmest decade ever. During 2020, the largest temperature deviation from 1981 to 2010 average was in the Earth's Arctic region, including northern Siberia. CO2 concentration in the atmosphere continued to rise in 2020 despite the global economic downturn caused by COVID-19 pandemic. The warming of the Arctic region and the defrosting of permafrost will release stored carbon dioxide and methane gases, causing a feedback loop that will intensify global warming. I am sensitive to the sun, and because of the type of skin I have, I can easily get a harsh sunburn more than other people. Some people avoid certain foods because they have negative reactions to them. They may develop a rash or have uncomfortable digestive problems. Similarly, planet Earth is sensitive to things that affect its biosphere, the realm inhabited by all living things. Too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere currently being added by the burning of fossil fuels is causing the average global temperature to rise. This is leading to a cascading series of changes that alter ocean and atmospheric currents, introduce new climate patterns, force human migration, and threaten the survival of several species. Greta Thunberg insisted in her January 2019 speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, that our house is on fire. And this is not just a metaphor. 2020, there were out of control wildfires in the American West, Australia, Indonesia, Amazonia, and Siberia. The U.S. National Interagency Fire Center reported that in the United States, almost 60,000 wildfires in 2020 burned through over 10.2 million acres of forest, almost double the acres that burned during the 2019 fire season. Many were started by lightning strikes, which have also increased in number as the earth warms. During the 2019-2020 Australian summer, bushfires burned over 45 million acres of land. Unprecedented heat waves led to vast fires in the Arctic regions of Siberia, burning peatlands and boreal conifer forests that released a record 244 megatons, or 5 billion pounds of carbon dioxide. Portugal, South Korea also set fire records in recent years. About 25% of the Pantel wetland covering parts of Brazil, Paraguay, and Bolivia burned in wildfires that were worsened by climate change. Scientists believe that the Scandinavian forests and forests in the northeastern region of the United States, where we happen to live, will soon be at risk. Since 1980, the United States and the American people experienced almost 250 weather and climate disasters. The cumulative economic cost for these events exceeds $1.6 trillion. Between 2016 and 2018, the average annual number of billion-dollar disasters was more than double the long-term average. Despite the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, the world is now on track to become 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 degrees centigrade hotter by the end of the 21st century. Even a 3.6 degree Fahrenheit, 2 degrees centigrade increase in average temperature would mean sea levels rising nearly 2 feet. Annual coastal flood would displace 30 million people. 37% of the Earth's population would face a severe heat wave at least every 5 years. 200 million people would be exposed to severe drought. Almost 400 million people would suffer from water scarcity, and crop yields and global per capita GDP would fall sharply. Climatologists and geographers always located New York City in the humid continental climate zone. As a result of climate change, they now reclassified the city as humid subtropical. The humid subtropical climate zone classification requires that summer day and night temperatures average above 72 degrees Fahrenheit and winter months average above 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite occasional cold snaps, after winter 2019-2020, New York City in all of New Jersey have met these criteria for the previous 5 years. Personally, I miss snow, but I don't mind the milder winters. The problem is the scorching summers. The last week of July 2020, the temperature humidity index for New York City hovered around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was almost impossible to stay outside. You can look what happens as the ocean rise. We're going to lose parts of New York City here. By 2021, major international businesses began to recognize and take into account the impact climate change will have on local communities and the global economy. Swiss Re, one of the largest suppliers of backup insurance company, issued a report estimating by 2050, climate change would lead to an annual decline in the global economy by about 23 million, or between 11 and 14%. The hardest hit areas in their prediction would be countries in South and East Asia, including India, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. At Davos, Greta Thunberg warned that according to the International Government Panel on Climate Change, humanity was less than 12 years away from a tipping point where it would no longer be able to undo ecological mistakes. A year later, in 2020, Zimbabwe in South Central Africa faced famine because of water shortages. Ethiopia was struck with a locust plague facilitated by warming Indian Ocean temperatures. Insect invitations were invading new climate zones and destroying coffee plants in Central America. The cities of Sydney, Australia, and Valparaiso, Chile, over 7,000 miles apart, separated by the Pacific Ocean, were surrounded by fires. Both cities are located near 30 degrees latitude in the Earth's southern hemisphere during their summer era. Greta concluded her Davos speech by saying, "Adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope, but I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if a house is on fire, because it is." Greta's words are not the only words of warning. Former US Congressman John Lewis, civil rights activist, he warned us early in 2011 during debate over legislation to protect the environment. When we take our air, water, and land for granted, when we show a simple lack of respect for nature and our environment, we unmake God's good creation. Humanity is the most important endangered species under threat from climate change, and yet we flood our ecology with poisons and pollutions. Now of a book, Teaching Climate Change, There is No Planet B. It's an interdisciplinary book designed for use in high schools, colleges, and by teachers as a resource that's scheduled for publication by Routledge. Teaching documents will be accessible on my website, alansinger.net. They include activities on the impact of climate on human evolution, ancient civilizations, the emergence of a modern world, and on the planet we inhabit today. Chapters in the book also look at the debate over whether capitalism or technology can solve the climate crisis, and as the need for student activism. A question for me and other teachers who are climate activists is, how do we best prepare a new generation to be active participants in preserving and transforming democratic societies, promoting international cooperation, and generating solutions that meet the needs of people across the globe? Two figures that point the way are the American philosopher John Dewey and the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. The key to Dewey's approach to education is recognizing the organic relationship between education and experience. As an advocate for democracy, Dewey understood that students must experience democracy. By extension, active citizen in a democratic society means that students must personally experience the power of activism and understand its implications to the fullest. Freire argued that progressive educational and social goals can only be achieved when students explicitly critique social injustice and actively organize to challenge oppression. The educational ideas of Dewey and Freire on experiential learning and critical analysis virtually mandate that teachers support student climate activism. Pairing civics education with student activism, including climate activism, is supported by the National Council for the Social Studies 3C framework and social studies standards in a number of states. According to the NJCSS, students need the intellectual power to recognize societal problems, ask good questions, and develop robust investigations into them, consider possible solutions and consequences, separate evidence-based claims from patriarchal opinion, and communicate and act based on what they have learned. A reversal, a halt, or even just a slowing of climate change will depend on global civic activism by masses of ordinary people to save local communities and human civilization from destructive forces unleashed by unfettered capitalist exploitation of the environment for the past 250 years. It is a difficult struggle, but there is no alternative. There have been advances and setbacks in campaigns to slow, halt, and reverse global warming and the burning of fossil fuels. But as climate threats increase, it is a movement that has to succeed. Our house is on fire. As one of the more popular signs on display at climate change rallies reads, there is no planet B. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope this material will help you as a teacher. I'm going to stop share and I'm going to stop recording.